You can't drag me into this. You can't.
All I want to do is drag the truth out of you.
But I've told you the whole truth.
Yes, I know that's what you tell me.
Why don't you just listen for a minute?
Listen. You listen. Tonight, I'm going to do the impossible. Nothing is impossible. Think of something. I will. Immediately? Why not?
Here's hoping you get something out of him.
Truth.
And soul.
Truth and Soul Incorporated, the New Zealand advertising podcast.
Today it is a special edition of the Truth and Soul Incorporated podcast. Not because of our guest, who is, as you'll soon learn, is anything but special, but because for the first time we are recording one at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening, with the addition of a small beer or a glass of red wine. All the others have been done at 9 o'clock with caffeine. So this could, this is a kind of experiment. We'll see how it goes from there. At this point, I'll introduce you to my guest. We have a lot in common because we are both originally from the UK. We both came down to New Zealand around 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And we both being creative directors of DDB New Zealand.
Sure.
Executive creative directors.
Sure.
We both worked at Rainey, Kelly, Campbell, Rolfe.
Oh, I forgot about
London.
that.
Yeah, I spent some time there. And also, little known fact, possibly to the great unwashed out there, is that we worked together at Colenso in about 1998, I think.
In the good old days.
The good old days.
Yeah.
For 3 weeks. Maybe 2.
3 glorious weeks.
3 glorious weeks. That was the only time in the last 20 years, and we produced a campaign for Skier magazine, working for the Scampster himself, Michael O'Sullivan. That went on to win Best of Show in Axis and various awards wherever Mike could be bothered to enter.
Turn out. Oh, yeah.
So in case you haven't guessed, I've probably done an introduction already and before this second introduction, it's Toby Talbot.
Hello.
So welcome. Welcome.
Good to be here.
Talbot.
He said, slurping the glass of Mount Edward.
And I believe it's traditional in these podcast things to start with what got you into advertising? Because are you the Scion? Scion, it means the disreputable son of a well-to-do family. Oh. Which I thought was a term that...
There's a man who does a lot of crosswords.
Yes.
I suppose my family are fairly well-to-do in so much as they're in those kind of posh books like Burke's Peerage and Debrett's and all that kind of stuff.
And the D&AD annual.
And the D&AD annual, which is, royalty, advertising royalty at least. So we got a stupid double-barreled name, which I dropped early on in the piece.
Fartface Talbot.
Shitface Talbot.
Shitface Talbot.
Yeah. So I dropped that. But yeah, so I come from that.
Hang on, for accuracy, that is Chetwin. Chetwin.
Silent.
Yeah,
silent.
F-
we have silent D in wind.
Y.
Silent wind.
Yeah.
Crazy name. But strangely enough, both my daughters go by it, and I don't know. It's a silly old name, but it's been around for about 1,000 years apparently.
Yeah, your name's your name.
Allegedly.
Yeah, nearly as long as you.
Yeah, not quite. Not quite as long as me.
and your Christian name, as I understand, is Tony.
Mostly. Yeah. I think I looking back, I blame Marty O'Halloran for that.
Yeah,
who steadfastly refuses to call me anything but Tony, and always kind of laughs at himself when he says it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like somebody repeating the same joke about 3,000 times and laughing every time, which possibly says a lot about Marty's sense of humour. But anyway, repetition is a good source of comedy. Apparently, I've heard,
slightly backward, a bit Australian ochre.
I can't possibly comment. Paul, but I mean, yes. But yeah, so I get Tony a lot.
Yeah,
I think the N is next to the B on the keyboard, and I like to. I mean, generally speaking, I've been told that that's part of the issue.
I didn't know where it come from. I knew it was at DDB, but I didn't know it was Marty. I thought it was Jenny Travers.
Well, I've always had it, to be perfectly honest. Okay. For as long as I don't know why, because it's 4 letters. You know, it's
not that hard.
Shouldn't be. It was actually Tobias, if truth be told.
Not Tonias.
Not no.
Yeah.
No.
Anyway, okay, that's the name sorted out.
That's that done.
So yeah, how did you at Chelsea Art?
I went to.
Where did
Chelsea.
you go to school? What
I
school?
went to a grammar school, which has in England, down in the West Country, in Salisbury, which is really only famous for 2 things really. One is cathedral, and the other is Novichok poisoning. Of course, that happened last year or whatever. You know.
Yeah, where the
Russians went on a day trip allegedly and happened to drop some lethal poison off on a doorknob.
Could happen to anyone.
Could happen to anyone. So so I grew up there, and I went to Bishop Wordsworth Grammar School, which is really not famous for anything other than it's a very rugby kind of school. So it was the feeder school for Bath, the rugby team, and so basically you ran the risk of dying on the rugby field. Naturally, I managed to avoid it.
Yeah, by
being a sort of swatty artist.
Chess team.
Well, yes, exactly. But yeah, that's where I was. Spent my formative years, and then I went up to London. I got into Chelsea, which was a bit of a fluke, really, because I didn't think I was cut out for that. But I think I'd run out of options, really.
But why did you do it?
Because I always fancied the idea of being a designer because it kind of sounded good. I had no real idea. It was a design. What are you? I'm a designer. It just felt good. And then I realised quite early on in the course that I was actually hopeless. And I switched to photography.
Yeah.
So Chelsea at the time had a wonderful, dark room studio kind of thing. And this was obviously pre-digital. So I learned all about photography. And then I kind of managed to bluff my way through a degree. And just at the end of it, I really was thinking, as were they, what the fuck is this guy going to do? Because he's clearly not that good at being a designer. And they had lots of illustrators.
Doesn't stop most of them. But,
No, they carry on, right? They persevere. So I just, Glenn, as I recall, Glenn, my tutor at Chelsea, said, look, have you thought about anything else? And I said, well, I kind of like the idea of advertising. And only because it feels like it's full of people who are sort of parvenus who kind of fall into stuff. That could be me. And he said, well, I know one guy in advertising. And I said, oh, okay, who's that? And he said, it's a chap called Paul Ardern.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, okay. Some of the listeners might not know who Paul Ardern is, but he was quite a thing then.
For listeners, Paul Ardern was the creative director when, as I've mentioned before, creative director meant something.
Oh, he was the governor.
So he was in charge of Saatchis in London in their heyday. And he then left to become a director.
Yes.
And he wrote quite a famous book entitled is it called The Best-Selling Book by Paul Ardern?
Isn't it? It's not how good you are, it's how good you want to be, or something like that. Isn't it one of those? Or maybe he wrote a couple. I don't know.
Yeah. But I think that was used as a selling line. The best-selling book by Paul Ardern. Because it was the best.
Self-fulfilling prophecy. Very clever.
Yeah, it did him very well. He sadly died a few years ago, but legend.
He died quite young, actually. It was all a bit sad. But I remember vividly going in there and not really knowing anything, which was, smart.
That seems to be your calling card.
I've got by quite well, considering. And I went in to see him, and it was a bit like that scene in the Hudsucker Proxy, when Tim Robbins walks into this vast sort of cathedral-like room, and Paul Newman sitting at the end, and you kind of walk for half an hour just to kind of find him. And I did, and he was there in his sort of immaculate sort of tweed suit. And he offered me a seat, and then he said, would you like tea or coffee? And I was like, I shall have tea. And he said, that is the correct answer. And he said, I will get you some Lapsang Souchong tea. And I thought, again, I had no idea what that was. It's just tea.
Yeah.
And then next minute there's an assistant who just appeared out of nowhere. And then he asked the immortal question, do you want to be an art director or a copywriter? And I said, well, to be honest, I have no idea.
not the right answer. But.
Totally the wrong answer. And he was very curt with me after that. But, you know, I don't know, for whatever reason, maybe because of his loyalty to Glenn, he said, well, why don't you come and just follow me around for a month, which was extraordinary.
That is quite extraordinary.
Yeah.
Because to even see Paul Ardern in those days was
I think obviously he and my tutor at Chelsea went back a long way, and it was just a really lovely thing to do that. I mean, it was hilarious though, because I mean I was basically treated, I don't know, I was just like an annoying insect in the room with him, essentially. So
again, you carried that with you.
Again, I can't help it, you know, like today. You're just enjoying this. I notice on these podcasts, it's just like, you know, you've got all the lines. It's all ready to go. I'll just serve them up. I'll serve them up.
Thank you. I'm sure you'll get your own back
one day
as we go on.
So I just remember the first time he just said, okay, we're going to an edit. And I thought, oh, great, an edit. He said, we'll find the creative team. And so we found the team. And he said, right, we shall go in my car. And you know, one of the creatives dared say to him, but the edit's in Soho and we're in Charlotte Street. It was like 5 minutes walk. And then he said, no, we shall take the car. So we go down in the private lift, which is only him and Charles and Morris allow in, and then we walk across to the garage and his Ferrari is waiting for us. And four of us get into a Ferrari, which is, you know, a 2+2, but it was still absurd. And I was kind of more or less jammed on the kind of the parcel shelf at the very back of the car. And he took about 45 minutes to negotiate the London traffic. Yeah. We finally got to said destination, and he parked just on a double yellow line right outside, you know, on Windmill Street, just outside the edit suite. And then he just said, right, well, we shall go in. Simon and John, I think were their names. Simon and John, we shall follow me. Toby, you stay in the car and look out for traffic wardens. And he cracked the window open a little bit, which always made me think I was like some kind of Labrador. And then he shut the door and fucked off for 45 minutes. So that was my first edit that I didn't go to. Yeah. That was kind of how it was with him. But anyway, it gave me a taste for, you know, the business. And he was a wonderfully, obviously he had an incredible eye, and he would be working with the best of the best at the time. So, you know, Helmut Newton would come by and show him the photographs he'd taken for his Nivea campaign. And it was, you know, I think Helmut was sort of more nervous than Paul, because he was Paul Ardern. So it was an incredible. So
it wasn't necessarily the work of sitting down with a brief and thinking up daft ideas to sell yogurts. It was the ethos of advertising that attracted you.
Well, I think there was what I didn't realize about advertising is, and maybe that the kind of the dark arts of how it all worked. And then when I bear in mind I'm walking into an agency that is, as you say, on top of their game, where there was a supreme confidence that kind of exuded from every office, every team, and famous work was just scamped and on the walls, you know. So you learnt a lot in terms of actually all about confidence as much as anything, which is the ability to kind of take something and do something with it. And so those 4 weeks, you know, it wasn't a long time in my life, but it was a time that kind of, I look back now and I go, that was one of 2 moments in my life that changed everything.
And what year was that?
Fuck, I knew you were going to ask me that. It was probably, I'd say late 80s, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, the reason I asked that was because I had a mate who worked in a...
Tenuous, Paul.
I know that's surprising in itself, who worked in a health, what do they call, medical health agency?
Medical agency.
Just off Charlotte Street, at probably the same time. Right. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I managed to talk him into sitting in and seeing what went on there. Bit of a step down from Saatchis, but...
Well, no, but I mean, I think that's how people learn. You know, it's an interesting... I mean, even this time of year right now, it's all the students are, you know, AUT show last night, you've got the media design school one next week, and you always get that distinct feeling when you meet these guys and girls and you look at their work, and it's like shit, some really great thinking here, but you are completely in the dark until you set foot in an agency, I think. You know, it's all theory. It's all kind of like, you know, I think I know how this works. But until you're actually in a place, and a medical agency, any agency really, and you kind of look under the bonnet a little bit, and you kind of go, oh, kind of get how it's done. Yeah.
And it will be interesting that that these people who've had, you know, I met Paul Ardern relatively around the same time again as a student at School of Communication Arts who used to come in.
Oh yeah, he was passionate about that.
And whether or not in 20 years' time people will be giving podcasts about you and me, long departed, going, oh yes, I met them at
I'd venture not,
such.
Yeah.
What a wanker!
Wow,
yeah,
quite.
Yeah, so you've done that.
I did that, and then I kind of got the bug, and then of course the recession hit, which I think you and I are both familiar with that, right?
Well,
which was that kind of like
think
everyone was sort of being laid off left, right, and centre, and it was the sort of post Thatcher kind of know bubble burst.
I think we were responsible. Probably.
I think largely we were.
Yeah,
you know,
I always blame you.
Not whole. I blame myself constantly. But then I struggled. I got a book together. I teamed up with somebody from Chelsea who really had no interest in being in advertising, which, you know, in hindsight, I probably should have just had that conversation with her and left it at that. But I didn't. And we walked the streets, and we kind of did what we had to do to try and get in to see people. And then anyway, but then I had another stroke of fortune, really, which is every year in London, the D&AD Advertising Concepts Workshop, as it was known back then, it's probably called something completely different now, but came along and was heavily oversubscribed. Everyone wanted to be on it, and it was how it was run back then was that you'd send your application and your portfolio into their offices at the time were in somewhere like St James, something very snooty.
And children, this is a physical portfolio.
This is a portfolio that you get blisters carrying around town, you know, and you're full of cardboard and shit ideas, basically. So it's kind of heavy, and you know, I've still kept it naturally. I just like to remind myself of how shit I was back then. But I went to I sent in my book, as it was known, to go to D&AD. I dropped it off there. Got a very kind of sort of curt letter back saying I was unsuccessful. And at which point I kind of went, oh, well, look, you know, because at that age you kind of go, oh, fuck it, I'll do something
business of arms dealing.
I'll do something else. And then it was a weird thing. I got this phone call. And it was from this woman who worked at an agency called Gold Greenless Trott, which again, anybody...
Famous old London agency.
Yeah, top London agency, and a man called Dave Trott, and who was a legend, still is, his blog's incredible, and he had basically found out that all these people had been rejected by D&AD by two ladies who work in administration at D&AD who weren't of advertising, who would possibly look at the rendering of the drawings and how neat how neat the handwriting was, rather than kind of looking at ideas or anything like that. In fact, you know, so...
I think subsequent events have shown to be quite accurate.
My handwriting's terrible.
Yes.
You're right. Damn, that hasn't improved. So anyway, he found out, Dave Trott, legend Dave Trott.
Yeah.
He made his poor PA then contact D&AD and said, can we have a list of all the people you've rejected in the last month? Yeah. It was a very long list. Fortunately... at the time, I was going by the name of Chetwynd Talbot, so I was C.
Good work.
Had I been Talbot, I would never have made it, I'm sure. So I was part of the first 30 people that she called, and the next minute I'd been invited to join his now famous, because he blogged about it, Advertising Failures Workshop, as he called it. So I went and did that at GGT, and I did that for 3 months. And that was...
So how was that full-time, or was that...
No. So that was just an evening thing where you'd spend time with some of his pretty amazing teams. Steve Henry, Axel Chaldecott, all those guys, Dave Waters, Paul Grubb, all those guys. Yeah. And no one will know them here, but they're pretty
very famous old advertising.
Old ad guys.
And if you heard of an agency you should have done, I think it was Agency of the Decade for the 90s. Hal Henry, Chaldecott Lurie.
That's right.
Yeah, very...
Tango.
interesting. Yeah.
And Dave Trott was, as his reputation sort of suggested, was fierce and terrifying. And he soon put paid to my art director, who didn't like to be told that she was shit. And so she soon left, which found me on my own on this course. And then a particular occasion where I'd been working on a brief that he'd set, and sometimes his teams would come in, and then on this occasion the man himself came in, and he happened to go straight to me, and you can just tell when people are in a foul mood. He was in a ropeable mood, and he basically went through all my scamps and went shit. I haven't actually had that since I've worked with, I think it was Mike O'Sullivan, obviously a famous approach.
They have similar traits.
Similar traits, and then he went shit all the way through. There was no respite, and then got to the very end. He said, "You've got 10 minutes to write a good headline and you're off this course." So showed me to his office, lovely office. I thought, well, this could be my only time I ever sit in a very nice office in advertising. And I wrote a headline under enormous duress that he ended up liking. So he kept me on the course. So that was kind of boot camp. And at that point, my work got better, because that's the kind of guy he is.
Because it had to.
Well, it kind of had to, but also, like when you rub up against that kind of talent, you do get better. I mean, I always kind of think about advertising as, great people standing on the shoulders of giants, etc. You've kind of got to be around good people.
Yes.
If you're around bad people, then you're going to be bad too, real fast. So that was my a couple of breaks, I guess. I look back at it now and I go, these were two fairly important people who came very briefly into my life, and kind of shaped me. And then I kind of bumped around a bit, and I ended up working at McCann Erickson.
So just to go back to Dave Trott, I've been thinking about this creative director behaviour.
Oh yeah.
For various reasons, including writing a book about creative directors. But that helped you get better at your work.
Yeah.
That would be described these days by a young person doing it as bullying and reprehensible behaviour.
It could be, yeah, I guess. In a certain way, I guess when I look back at it, it was fairly brutal. But I suppose you have to remember that guy was possibly one of the busiest ad guys in London, running an international agency, who decided by himself, no one prompted him, to reach out and try and put something back and help people who he felt had got a tough break at the very beginning of their advertising careers. So I guess when you frame it like that, you kind of go, the guy was a bit of a saint. You're absolutely right, I guess, in so much as, there are ways to get great work out of people. I personally am not a great fan of the bullying way, because I think ultimately people can do great work if they're bullied, but they'll hate you for it, and they'll leave when they can.
But you don't hate. I'm not saying that what he did was wrong, and
No.
I think probably people react in different ways. There are some people, need no random, like, mate, you have it in you. You can do it. Just keep at it. And other people need to be shocked out of their mediocrity.
Yeah, potentially. I think it's kind of easy to drift once you're in an agency. I think, it's quite easy for people just to move along and just do what they're told to do. And, and you'll kind of be right if everyone thinks you're funny and, everyone likes you. You know, it's that talented and nice. Never. I had to work harder. But, I think that talented but nice philosophy is, it's still a bit true. Nice is a horrible word, but yeah, I know what you mean. I think sometimes cajoling and kind of, like doing things by sort of hugging, and here's a wee hug. You're great. You're wonderful. And you're not. You're plainly shit.
Yeah.
And you need to get your act together. I don't think that does anybody any favors either.
Yeah.
So it's for me, it's always a hard thing in a way, because sometimes you're also frustrated because you may have said it a few times to somebody and they're not listening, and all those things. There's not really the silver bullet really on all that kind of how do you get great work. But I think I take your point that kind of an approach, which his was, he was ruthless, and he used to talk about how every creative team in his department, he paid no more than £6,000 a year, which obviously in today's money would be more, but not that much more. So he was paying people minimum wage, and there was a lot of kind of northern lads who had kind of been, I was on a building site, and the next minute I'm working in advertising. Yeah. And I kind of felt somehow there was a sort of, Mr. fucking fancy pants surname with a posh name and all the rest. I just thought, well, I'm buggered, really, in a way. Because at the time it was all about kind of gritty, that was his kind of thing that he got going. But my God, the results that he achieved. And the people who kind of look at him as some form of kind of deity now, because there's an innate wisdom to the man. If you look at his blog, he talks just the most incredibly, he talks common sense as much as anything in a very beautiful, measured way. Incredibly short sentences. So, like you read it as a copywriter and you love it for that reason. But then, there's wisdom in the man.
You couldn't read a novel written like that.
You'd struggle. There'd be a lot of negative.
Sorry, Dave.
There'd be a lot of negative space on every page. But certainly as a
a short one.
A short novel, a novelette.
Yeah.
Is that what you're thinking for your creative director books?
Mine will be hugely overwritten.
The bullying years.
Don't worry about it. just bullying generally. But Steve Henry's quite posh, isn't he?
Oh yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Talking about poshness, I actually suffered a bit during my formative years because I went to the School of Communication Arts.
That sounds terribly posh.
Which, exactly, and there were certain creative directors around London who didn't like people from the School of Communication Arts because they paid to go on it. And therefore,
it's a private course. I remember
it was a private course. And I push people, and I go, I spent 5 years working in fucking casinos to save up enough money to go on this course, and you're refusing to see me because I'm
betting,
with the misery of American gamblers who had lost their money. Yeah.
I know what you mean. I remember all that. I was one of those people who was really fucked off with the school. I mean, I came out of art college with a huge fucking
3-year degree,
a 3-year degree of debt and meaninglessness, and I would love to have done that course.
Yeah. Not in the same year as me and O'Sullivan, probably.
Probably not.
That would have been a bit
weird.
Much.
It would have been a bit weird.
Okay, so you did the that course, and then how long did it take you from that to get a job, and who was it with?
It took me a while. So I ended up working, just doing that 3-month placement here, 3-month placement there business. Yeah. I ended up at working in a pub in the evenings, doing all I can to get by. And, well, I mean, not all, obviously. Some dignity, Paul.
No.
But I ended up working in a place in the city in the where's it called, Spitalfields, called the Moorgate Group for the first 6 months of my life, writing ads for unit trusts. My working life, and that was pretty fucking shit. And soul destroying. But it also taught me the art of headline writing. Now, as luck would have it, the creative director knew a thing or two about grammar and English and syntax, and he kind of gave me Fodor's Modern English on my first day, and he said, you've got to know the difference between a split infinitive and a dangling participle. Of course, you know the difference, don't you, Paul? What is the difference?
Monty?
I wouldn't have a fucking clue. I didn't really read it. But he helped me become a writer. So even though I was doing dreadful work, I was learning to write. So in my evenings, I'd be getting my book together. And believe you me, I had nothing to do with what I was doing during the day. But again, that kind of helped me start getting ready for working in advertising proper. And
I think that the writing, being able to make an interesting ad using only a headline is a really useful skill in our business. And dare I say it, one that is maybe falling off, partly because we don't do half as many print ads as we used to, but if you can write a compelling banner ad using all type.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, we write social posts, we basically, we're all over it in terms of actually what we're writing. We're still writing. It's just, I think you're right that the care and attention that went into the words seemed to be lacking, and I think that comes through in a lot of the books that I read.
Yeah.
And it's not about me being a kind of a Nazi about grammar or anything like that. It's just more about actually even knowing how a sentence works.
Yeah.
You know, things like that where you go, do you want me to read this the way it's written, or do you want me to actually read it the way a sentence should be? So that kind of stuff really fucks me off. And I don't mean that, and I keep it mostly to myself because it's just the way of the world, right?
You can get it out here. Yeah.
Yeah, just between us.
You can vent.
Just between us.
Yeah. No one else will hear
That's
us.
a bit of a shame. It's a bit of a shame because when you work with great writers, and I have, you know, they just, you know, they bring to life, you know, what could be a very kind of boring, tawdry brief. And then just through their words, you're smiling, you're laughing. And of course, bear in mind that you have to read that to a client who's going to spend a lot of money making it. And if you're not going to make them laugh with your script, then good luck, you know, or if you're going to kind of draw them in with the words, you know. So I find the art of writing, as you pointed out, I think it's a bit of a tragedy that there isn't more of that sense of kind of, you know, theatre that you can get through the right words. I mean, great headlines are few and far between, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm doing the Access thing this year, and we were looking at the print category, and I was like, you know, there's like 3 things in the print category. There's about 3,000 things in other categories, and print's like campaign, single. I'm like going, yeah, maybe we should put innovation in there, you know, like use print in an innovative way. But that's kind of more kind of like because it's the death throes, probably. I don't know.
Yes.
In terms of entries of the Access Award, I'm not just saying of the, I mean.
Yeah, and well, the question is, are there death throes because nobody does print advertising anymore? And, okay, the subscription numbers might not be what they were, but I still see plenty of magazines.
Yeah, it's funny. We had Facebook come into the agency the other day, and they doing a big thing about, you know, storytelling. I love it when Facebook do that. You know, how to do storytelling in 6 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good luck. And one of the things they kind of led with was the Colin Kaepernick kind of headline. Kaepernick. Sorry.
Yeah.
He's a good friend of Kaepernick. That's another Colin. Sorry.
Yeah, the issue here is, listeners, that I'm a big fan of the NFL, and Toby isn't not. But yeah,
I like the round ball.
Yeah.
But they led with a press ad, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
A great headline and a visual and a logo.
Yeah.
And they talked about that being the complete ad and how wonderful it is. And there was a kind of rich irony to it in a sense, because you kind of go, the power of the ad is not how you present it in Instagram or how you might do an Instagram story of that. It's the power of the words. Coupled with the story of Colin, whose surname I can't pronounce. And that was the thing that got me about it. And I still feel the power of the words are everything in a way there.
Yes, I still think they're hugely important.
I don't know if the listeners can pick up your dog snoring. Hopefully that's not a reflection of this conversation.
We shall find.
Can I pour a glass of wine for added effect?
Yeah.
I was just telling Paul about the wonderful Jay Rayner's podcasts, which are
he's now on his second bottle, listeners.
Out to lunch, and basically he's at lunch with famous people, and you hear these lovely sounds like this. How good is that? And knives and forks and burps and farts.
If you hold that thought for a minute, Toby, I need to go to the loo. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Which is.
Can you use the bathroom this time?
On my own, yes, unassisted. But I'll leave you with one thought, which is that in some of the previous podcasts, we've had to do a lot of editing because there have been some libelous things that have come up.
Yes.
So I've learned from somewhere. This might be from Ben Kay. I'm not sure. Thank you. It was you, Ben. That if you talk about someone, you have to pretend they're in the room.
That's a great idea.
So you. Yeah.
Is that just a forewarned is forearmed kind of moment?
Yeah. So no, it's not that. Just in case you.
Because I'm on my second glass of red, right?
Yeah, there is that.
There is that.
And you've complained about dog snoring. You might want to liven things up. I'll be back in a minute.
Thank you.
Don't say anything.
I won't. Well, now Paul's gone to the bathroom. I just want everyone to know what a crashing bore he is, and it's just embarrassing, really, having to be here. Just so you know that. Anyone who hasn't met Paul, he is a crashing bore. Yeah. So just bear with. He will try and interrupt me all the time. You just have to go through what he says because it's, obviously quite dull. But I'll be back soon after. The dog's crying now because, the dog agrees. Okay.
Keep smiling. Just keep smiling.
Truth and soul.
Put that away. Monty, it's all right, I'm back. What was he touching you? Show me where.
Show me where on the doll.
Right, sorry about that, Toby.
That's all right.
Now,
I love the way Monty drags his undercarriage along the floor. And I say that because
You're jealous.
I've tried. But he's really got the technique down pat, hasn't he? He's very, very good.
yeah, I mean...
Did he learn that from you, do you think?
I couldn't comment. I couldn't possibly comment. But what surprises me that I think you'd get terrible if you tried it. Toby's now removing his trousers to try it. Now, if you tried it, you get terrible carpet burn, but he seems to get off on the carpet burn.
Wow.
Carpet burn on the Todger.
Yeah. That's true. Is that going to be edited out, do you think?
Well, that'll be the most popular bit. Anyway,
I think it could be. It's a great headline. It's a great headline, mate. Carpet burn on the Todger. An intimate evening with Toby Talbot.
Okay, now, so eventually,
Yeah.
you've done all this.
Hardship.
You've done the placements, and somebody was
Yeah.
foolish enough to give you a job.
Yeah.
Who was that man? Stroke woman.
It was a guy called... It was a Jerry...
Monty, come here.
Jerry Green.
Jerry Green.
So Jerry Green made a name for himself back in the day as the author of the now famous, or were famous at least, Nescafe Gold Blend ads.
Yes.
Which were kind of if you can imagine, listener, the kind of Anchor Family kind of vibe, where it's a kind of episodical kind of love story between two smarmy people who like shit coffee.
Yep.
That was pretty much what he did, and it made the What Next episode would be basically, front page of the Sun newspaper, like just to, and this is pre-social media, obviously, but that would be quite a far-reaching effect for an advertising campaign. Now, so without being too snooty about it, I think we'd all agree that if we could kind of do a campaign where everyone is waiting to the point where the national newspapers would, guess as to what would happen next. That's what he did. That's what he did. He too was passionate about writing, and I remember joining.
He hid that well.
Well, he did. He fucking did. But when I joined, he kind of
Jerry. I'm just joking.
Jerry. Yeah, Jerry. But the day I joined, he gave me, I think Pulp Fiction had come out, which dates me a bit. But he gave me the Tarantino screenplay.
Yeah.
And he gave all the writers a Tarantino screenplay of Pulp Fiction. And I think most of us were looking at Pulp Fiction and looking at the Gold Blend ads and perhaps seeing a bit of a gulf between them. But nonetheless, the intent was good. Yes. And again, I've been fortunate because I think a guy like him, he had his moment, did really well.
Because that campaign sold a shitload of coffee.
Oh, mate. If you think about it, it's the worst coffee, right? But they sold tons of it. Maybe just the great unwashed don't understand what a good coffee is.
Yeah, well, the flat whites weren't even invented then, I don't think.
If you'd asked for a flat white in London back then, I don't know what you get, really.
You get a punch. Probably.
You get a punch. Yeah. So I learned a bit about writing. Not necessarily from him, but there were people in that department who were rather good, like Derek.
Not from him.
Derek Haas, who
who's an art director.
Who's an art director, but he knew a thing or two about communication.
Yeah.
We used to call him lovingly Miss Havisham because he was, he was one of those guys. He was in his 70s. He was on a huge amount of money, worked 3 days a week, drove a Porsche, and I kind of went, "You're kind of a dude," because I'm a deeply vapid individual, which you know of me. But I kind of went, he's kind of clever, and he'd done all these ads. I think he had a claim to be the most having the most D&AD pencils, but that didn't really count because he'd been entering D&AD since 1965, where I suspect back in 1965 it wasn't quite so hard to win a D&AD pencil, but I might be wrong.
Yeah.
But I learned a fair bit from him. He was wonderful. And it was that his thing was about showing the cleaner your ads. He always used to say, for God's sake, don't keep it to yourself. If you're not sure, just grab somebody, say, what do you think? That kind of sense of not...
I thought it was John Webster, but maybe both.
Well, I mean, I suspect they're both of the same. I mean, he used to work with John Webster. So there you go. Ex-BMPer.
Derek has... I've only ever spoke to him once in my life.
Yes.
We got something in D&AD donkeys years ago, and he didn't know me from Adam. He rang me up to say how much he liked the ads, and they're wonderful. They were. That was very kind.
He was a lovely man, actually, very generous.
And Mike Cousins, who was creative director at around that time, said that the hardest thing he ever had to do in his life was turning down an ad from Derek Hess, because he was so passionate about it.
Deeply passionate. Deeply passionate and fabulous person. Yeah, so I mean, again, that kind of being around people like that helps you enormously. And then I suppose just because people will need to be kind of woken from their torpor of us talking about people that they don't know. I happened to get an opportunity to work in New Zealand, which was kind of weird and fluky. I'd worked with a few Kiwis, and I always loved their sense of optimism, coupled with a lovely jaded cynicism. Hard to say after a glass and a half, but jaded sort of. There was a cynicism that made me think they're inherently British. Kiwis.
I thought that we introduced the cynicism to New Zealand.
I think it came from here. I think it came from here. I'm sorry.
Well, live and learn.
So I always they're kind of my kind of people.
Yeah.
So and then I got an opportunity, and weirdly I got flown down for an interview in Wellington. This is a terrible thing to admit to. I got an interview in Wellington at an agency.
And they paid for it. They flew you down.
They flew me down.
Business or in the back?
Oh, fuck, I can't remember.
Oh,
I didn't really care
back
then. Now, of course, I'm an incredible snob.
It was in the back.
Yeah.
Stowage. It was just me and 3 dogs in a crate.
Yeah.
Rocked up in Wellington just as a southerly was blowing in. And basically I just thought, I can't live here. I can't live here because this weather is worse than the weather that I've come from, which is pretty shit.
Yeah.
I mean, I now know that there are 5 days of the year where it's absolutely fucking glorious in Wellington. The Riviera of wherever they are.
Of the Cook Strait.
Of the Cook Strait. But I just felt, oh God. But I knew that there was a sort of somebody in Auckland who might be interested. So I called up, and next thing I knew, I was picked up. I made some feeble excuse about going to see an aged aunt in Auckland on my way back. So I managed to do that. Yeah. Spent 2 days in Auckland. Met the wonderful Roger McDonnell.
Well, he could pass as an aged aunt, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, Roger.
There's another lawsuit pending. And so I ended up spending 2 days in Auckland, and then I ended up taking a job at Colenso, which back then, ladies and gentlemen, was a pretty fucking shit agency, but they happened to be very big. Yeah. So you're starting from a base of big, and bit by bit, kind of. And so, fast forward, I went back to London, had some very kind of shaky video camera footage of Auckland, which my wife really enjoyed, made her vomit. In fact, it was so bad, the footage. And we didn't really have those things like cameras on phones back in 1904. And then I got back on the Mayflower, headed back to London, and took the job, accepted the job. Yeah. Jacked it in at McCann, and then.
So can I say, because you were frustrated by?
I'd done the kind of really smart thing of buying a house whenever I could, and then having 2 children by the time I was sort of 12. Kind of felt like it probably, but mid-20s. Yeah. And I just found myself going, oh God, this is hard. And then a couple of things happened. I got mugged by gunpoint. That's always a good kind of leveler. And then I took our youngest down to the local park, and she was playing in the sandpit right next to a large syringe A couple of things like that kind of
Not
made
yours.
No, I always smoke it.
Yeah.
I decided there and then that, fuck, this is shit. And I'd heard so much about New Zealand from my Kiwi friends in London, although ironically they were in London and not in New Zealand. But I decided let's do this. And so Jo, sight unseen, my lovely wife, decided that was a good idea. And I don't know why, but I held out for residency. I said, no, I need to have residency. But that only made them more determined back in the day of saying, oh, great, he's really serious about coming here, as opposed to he's going to come here for 6 months.
And so what year was this?
1904.
Yeah.
1990, end of 96.
96, yeah.
So I got a few years on you, mate.
23 years ago, yeah. I'm
and then,
19 years.
Yeah, and then I kind of stayed at Colenso and got in there, and the creative director I worked for at the time kind of soon went. Next minute, Mr. O'Sullivan comes into my life like a sort of jolly, well, everything he's not now, really. Sort of jolly, fat, shorts wearing, kind of jandal wearing leprechaun, and not the svelte gentleman he is today, but
the smart silver fox. But.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's just the most fantastic journey that we went on, and Mike taught me heaps, and was and also just kind of hiring. I mean, God, magnet for great people as well. So back then, super kind of people came into the agency, and Mike's ability to kind of attract talent, I am still to this day kind of in awe of, really.
He lies. I think he lies.
But I mean, we all lie.
We don't have to pretend, Mike. We can just abuse him.
But I mean, he was, it was an extraordinary time, and it was kind of lovely. And to this day, that's kind of more my thing. Where I'll go somewhere and kind of make it better, rather than kind of, God knows how hard it would be to go into somewhere really good and make it really good.
Yeah.
So that was amazing, great journey. 8 years, longest I've worked anywhere.
Yeah.
And then from there,
because Roger went, as I recall, they had the business. It was a big, solid, not the Colenso BBDO that the world knows now, but it was a well-run, profitable New Zealand, not particularly sparky advertising agency.
Quite.
And Roger, I believe, Roger McDonnell went, fuck this, I want us to do great work.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Roger that's wonderful is, Roger's a creative through and through, and yes, back in the day he worked with Len Potts, who's one of the most famous, New Zealand writers there ever was, and I think they created some famous work. Now I work on Toyota now, and the crumpy ads of way back when, that was all Roger and Len,
Yeah.
And so Roger, loves creative, always has done, always will do, I think. And then, so yeah, that's right. It was still a very big agency, and back then it was Clemenger. It was more Clemenger than it was BBDO.
Yeah.
But it was still a big business, and lots of kind of suits, sort of running it. And when I say suits, I'm talking about Peter Clemenger and kind of deeply terrifying individuals like that.
Yeah.
And Rog just kind of tried his best to kind of keep them away and try to kind of create that environment. But I think hiring Mike, and then, kind of Maddox and all these great people who've kind of come and gone in that agency. And now obviously you've got Nick and now you Levi. But that whole kind of renaissance happened around about then. And all power to Colenso, because they, as I said, being great and staying great, that's really the true test of a good agency. And I think, back then I just remember some of the kind of the incredible people, and not necessarily the incredible work, because I think at the time, the whole awards focus back then was pretty unhealthy, to be honest. There was lots of awards chasing and stuff like that kind of affected really everything. But I think at the same time, the buzz that started going around that agency, I think was
and I think, because that was just as I came to New Zealand, and I think that...
Well, I think, it's true to say that you were it was a pivotal moment.
For me?
Well, no, I mean, for Colenso. You worked with me.
Yeah.
For how long?
2 weeks, I think.
Shit, that was funny. We're both, by the way, we're both writers, in case you don't know that, listeners. But so therefore we had a kind of like, it was all about writing headlines, wasn't it?
But who did the art direction?
Lindsay
Redding.
Genius.
Let's have a
Let's have a little razor glass to Lindsay Redding.
Lindsay, who's no longer with us.
One of the toppest of top people.
Mr.
Magoo. Yes, that was good.
So the at that time, New Zealand used to be the great advertising came out of Saatchis,
For sure.
and then Colenso started doing great stuff,
Doing their
and
thing.
that seemed
Yeah.
to wake up the whole industry to, hey, we should be trying to do that. So I was just trying to think who's in the Colenso creative department then. Steve Cochran, who's been there for about 237 years.
The hardy perennial.
Um,
That's a gardening term for everyone.
Leon and Lucian. So
Well,
Lucian,
that's right.
who went on to
Leon,
Shine. And
yeah.
Leon is over in Melbourne, I think.
He is in Melbourne, but he went on to great things.
Yeah.
Worked in really good agencies in Chicago, and worked through this. Was in the States for a long time. Yeah, very talented. Lucian, now the restaurateur, obviously.
Richard Maddox, I don't know. Have you heard of him?
Never heard of him.
Never heard of him. Leo Promutico.
Who is kind of godfather to my girls, and rather, I spoke to him only yesterday. Now has just employed his 200th person in his agency in New York.
So to people who don't know, Leo is quite an extraordinary individual. I had a fantastic time with him judging Cleo in Las Vegas, which was a lot of fun. Australian, very driven, fantastic footballer. Goalkeeper, where he used to play out on the...
He used to train with Harry Kuehl. He was going to be he had a trial in the Bundesliga.
Yeah. Well, he told me
Sorry.
I'm sure he told you the story, but he was on a plane to go up to Eintracht Frankfurt or something, and
That's right. His appendix burst.
His appendix burst, and he went. That was a sign that he shouldn't play professional football. And
that was a sign that he should go and work for Mike O'Sullivan for $3 bob a week at Colenso.
And he's regretted it ever since. Kids, if you're ever at the airport and your appendix bursts, do not go and work for Mike O'Sullivan. Go and play for Man
United. So
United.
Leo's incredible. But so Josh Robbins, I was just thinking who else was there. And then, Rebecca Carrasco, the wonderful Natalie Knight, who is back at Colenso. Maria Ward, as she was then. And
complete losers like Jaco van der Venter, Darren Wonkam, and...
I'm not going to add to the list. Do you see what I did there?
You left me hanging.
Monty winked, and I was like, that's the don't talk moment. It was an amazing time.
Oh, yeah, I'm joking, Hoof and Wonky. So you went to...
Saatchi. Mike left, went to Clems, Melbourne. Roger kind of did that kind of classic Roger thing where he couldn't decide between Rich and I to take over, so and then told us that.
Yeah.
So either way, it was always going to be awkward. And initially, it was me in charge, and then it became Rich and myself, and then it became this kind of weird thing where, classic example, ladies and gentlemen, of a bit of indecision causes.
There's only two people listening, so lady and gentleman.
That's right. Yeah, well, Monty's not listening; he's asleep again. So basically, it was kind of like, who's going to run this, and it became a bit weird. And then I kind of thought, oh no, I don't want to be a creative director. I fucking hate this job. And Mike says, come and write for me and carry on doing what you've been doing, and I did. I took Rebecca over from Colenso. She was my creative partner. Yeah, Carrasco, and. Then I just thought, this is my happy place. I'm back to writing again. I was always kind of a bit reticent about being a creative director.
Yeah.
And started writing again. And then, of course, Mike's famous fear of flying meant that sooner or later I was going to have to run Toyota, who are down in Palmerston North. So by default, I became a creative director again, running Toyota, who are...
I think that was when he invented... fear of flying, because he didn't want to go to Palmerston North, because for someone who hates flying, he does an awful lot of it.
Paradise North. So that's right. Well, he does now. Maybe the drugs have evolved particularly, or he's always loved it.
Yeah.
Maybe you're right. I don't know. So I did that.
Yeah.
Had a great time. Had an amazing time. And then, of course, at that point, you and I, our paths cross.
Well, we're just going back. There was some.
That's not me, by the way. That's the dog. The dog's hocking something up. The dog needs Heimlich maneuver.
There are a lot of very talented creative department then at...
That was absurd. Oh, my God, the dog.
Saatchis.
What's the dog doing? Okay.
Matty and Dave.
The wonderful Matty and Dave.
Matty and Dave, who are now... Are they Facebook? Wasting
No,
their lives?
No.
Oh,
They're head of Google Zoo Asia Pacific.
Oh, Google, Facebook, same thing.
Spoken like a true futurist.
Yeah. Only a matter of time. I know. Jay and Andy, who went
who were colourful.
Went on to stuff in Australia and
that's right.
New York.
Oh, fantastic people. I mean, I don't think it was like, as a football man, I was thinking of the Galacticos, the kind of the Real Madrid squad.
Yeah.
What always made me laugh, and one of the things I've loved about Matty Burton, is that he kind of tells it like it is, as the son of a biker gang head from Adelaide, So, it was an amazing bunch of people. And that was 2 years that rushed by. And then, I don't know, I felt like I kind of got my mojo back as a creative director. I kind of went, I kind of understand it.
Yeah.
I think that being a writer and making that transition to being a creative director it's a huge transition.
Nobody teaches you what to do.
No, and also there's that thing for me of going, do you want to be the centre forward or the manager? Because you kind of can't do both. And there's always that classic mistake I think really good creatives make, which is that kind of, the knight in shining armour. Look, don't worry.
Yeah.
I'll take it from here. Which, I without naming names, I know a lot of creative directors who've done that, and it kind of does two things. One, yes, you're right, it proves to everyone that you're a writer, but they knew that already. More importantly, what it does is your creatives kind of hate you for it, because you'll end up being the knight in shining armour on all the big jobs. And, it begs the question, why do you have all these people in your department when you're writing the ads yourself? So it's kind of like, for me, letting go of the reins a little bit, and there was a really big transition for me at that point, which was about going, actually what's really, really cool is finding talent, nurturing talent, creating great people, and then taking all of the credit.
Yeah, I think that's that's the blueprint. That's the blueprint
Right
for
there.
creative direction.
Right there.
And then firing them. No, that's frowned on these days.
But it was great, and then I got a call from Marty saying, "Katma, the love of my life, is going to set up his own agency, and do you want to come on board?" Which was
no, I wasn't. I was going to.
Oh no, you went to Melbourne.
I went to Melbourne. Yeah.
Yeah. How was that for you? See how I just listeners how I turn the tables.
Okay.
Next week we'll be doing a podcast. I'll be interviewing Paul Katma.
Melbourne was a very interesting time, and
it's not what you told me.
Interesting as in
revealing.
Yeah, and it convinced me that I should stay in New Zealand.
Yeah.
For me, I think potentially had I gone to Sydney, then that I maybe would have stayed over there. But I'm quite happy to have.
And I think it's interesting because I get asked all the time, and you will ask me, I'm sure, is the differences between Australia and New Zealand, because I spent a couple of years there.
Yeah.
In Sydney, and to which the short answer is there's no fucking difference at all when you're in advertising. I think you can be in multitudinous agencies all around the world, and it's the same old problems that we always have. I think the difference here is that because we're a significantly smaller market, you're not going to have, you're not going to have a huge kind of layer cake of bullshit that you have to kind of go through to get to a decision maker. Whereas I think, one of the key things in bigger markets is that there are lots and lots of, kind of boxes that need to be people in the middle, right? And here you'll see the CEO and you'll see the head of marketing, and then job done. Usually.
I had some. I don't think they are the same. I had some extraordinary experiences in Melbourne.
Yeah. No, I'm
not going to go into.
No, but I think, yeah. Look, it's great here. There's no doubt about it, and the proof is in the pudding. The work's fantastic, but I do think the 2 years I had at DDB Sydney were phenomenal in terms of the work we did and the clients that we had and blah blah blah. And I go, so to that point, it's just a time and a place, isn't it? And I think if you go to Melbourne and you're, we've actually got a Melbourne office and they're doing incredibly well. Toyota's down there, Saatchis, and it's hard, but it's a hard market, right? It's very old school. It's a kind of Wellington kind of vibe where it's about who you know. And then when you look at Clems Melbourne, certainly when you were there, they're huge stronghold. But, I know enough about your experience because we've had that conversation that we don't need to go into. But it is a time and a place. You have to be, you're somewhere at a time. And if you're in the right agency at the right time, you can do great work. Yeah. I guess that's my point, rather than necessarily saying, all the clients are shit over there and they're great here. It's not necessarily true. Yeah, no, it's not necessarily true. Anyway, so you had many happy years at DDB New Zealand. Yeah, I had 5 actually, and it was weird after the kind of the 8 years at Colenso, which when you look back, it felt a lot shorter. Yeah, and 5 years at DDB, which felt a lot longer, like a long time. and it was phenomenal. And obviously, great legacy from you taking over there, and I guess wonderful clients. One of whom I did you listen to? I did. Mike's podcast? Yeah. I love and Mike is Mike. Mike is a Mike Watson we're talking about here, listener. Yeah, Mike of Sky TV. Mike from Sky TV. Yeah, we actually went to cricket on. Oh, Sunday. Did you? Yeah. Oh, lovely. Yeah. And Mike's one of a kind. Yeah. He always kind of reminded me with his humour of an early Peter Sellers. Again, the listeners won't know who Peter Sellers is, but think the Pink Panther maybe. But he's a funny bastard, really. Yeah. And what I loved the most about Mike is that I don't think he ever did a PowerPoint in his life. A, because he didn't have to, because he got all the suits at DDB to do them for him, all of his presentations. And B, it didn't really matter to him. Mike is not a... And I did listen to him, and I think Mike learned heaps along the way, but ultimately he had great taste, I always thought. He had an aesthetic, and he had the confidence to back ideas that he knew might get a few complaints along the way, but it didn't stop him. You know what I mean? And I think that's what separates people like Mike from, I think, a lot of, technically speaking, very clever people who kind of hide a little bit behind the science. I think you're right. I think he was very instinctive. He'd just go, I like it. Yeah. And he would realise he wasn't stupid. He'd go, yes, we'll probably get complaints about this, but if you don't get complaints, no one's paying any attention. So we'll go with it. And I think he had a great relationship with John Follett, who's the CEO of Sky. He did. TV. I mean, I think probably during my tenure that relationship was tested more than it was during yours. There was certainly one occasion. John liked me. Yeah, I never really got to meet John. Yeah. But awkward. So no, I just remember one occasion where a young team who, funnily enough, came to see me when the day I'd resigned from Saatchi. They came to see me with their book. Young, talented team. Well, I knew they were talented. Their book sort of suggested otherwise, but my instinct was that they were good. Yeah. And I said, I tell you what, why don't you just walk out the door now? And we forget that we had this meeting. I started at DDB in a month's time and come and see me, and that was Simon Vickers and James Tucker. Yeah. And Vickers is a great comedy writer, as most people in advertising know now, and now currently at Ardern in London and doing funny Marmite ads. But back then... and listen to his podcast. Right. Yeah, so be careful. So he is in the room now. No, Rickers, as we knew him back in the day at DDB. No, we're good. I would never say anything negative about Simon other than the fact he's a bit of a wanker.
Yeah.
I mean, that's okay.
I'll edit out that other name that you called him.
Yeah. But he did he and Simon, he and Giant, as he was known, Giant and Si, they did an ad for Sky. Fucking hell. And, David Shane directed it, came down from New York, top comedy director. Felt like a good idea at the time.
Yeah.
K Sarah Sarah, bought the rights, did the lyrics. The whole thing was, when I kind of go, like sick humor, this was kind of essentially wrong on most levels. That I look back at it now and I go, Jesus, that could have been a fireable offence for an agency. And John Follett, who I since found out you'd know, Paul, because you've probably been to church with him, but is a Christian. And
he never told me
this was
that.
an ad involving somebody sleeping with a lady boy, a man having his hands chopped off by a shark. It pretty much ticked all the vile kind of boxes that needed to be ticked by a good Christian soldier. And
I always thought it was biographical of you, other than
look at my hands.
Yeah.
Look at my hands, Paul. Look at my hands.
No, obviously not.
Anyway, that was
just
on
a
air
lady
that was on air for less than a month.
Hey,
And we weren't
listener,
fired.
in case you don't know what Toby's referring to, is it still on YouTube? It might have been
Probably.
pulled down. So it was it was black humour,
One way of putting it.
and I guess you always those things can always be taken.
Are you going to say the wrong way?
They could be taken the wrong way potentially.
Yeah. Oh no. Well, I mean,
Yeah, it was always
lesson
like-
learned. It wasn't probably one of my
Yeah.
glorious moments.
A question, because I've
Yes.
I've had similar things blow up in your face. At what point did you go, "Oh fuck, this is not
Mike
what it said
called.
on the tin"?
When Mike called, because the thing about Mike, because I think the thing about Mike that is so incredible is that he's like having and easy to take advantage of this.
Says
in a
Mike
way.
O'Sullivan, people, but yeah.
Mike Watson is that he
sorry.
is that he's a creative in a way.
Yeah.
And so when Mike laughs, you go, it's funny.
Yeah.
And you find yourself getting into quite a different mindset. And I don't know about you, mate. I mean, you did great work together, but it's kind of like there are times where you kind of, it all gets a bit blurred because you go, and he goes, what about this? And you go, oh, that's a good idea. Let's do that. So he's, without doubt for me, the only client who's kind of been like that.
Yeah.
And that's what makes him, who he is. Unemployed. Actually, harsh, probably. But I mean, he's a wonderful guy. and I'm sure
he is as employed as he wants to be at the moment. I think.
Well, I suspect so. He's a
he's
a special person.
Yeah. We're going to rename this the Mike Watson podcast.
The Mike Watson podcast. Yeah. So yeah, that was great. But yeah, 5 years there.
So Mike rang up and went, ooh.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mike was like,
John's not happy.
He was all for it, and then went, John's a Christian. It's all over. It's all bad. We're going to do this. But it wasn't that usual, what I call a kind of having a blamestorming meeting, as I call them. Where everyone goes in the room and goes, it's your fault.
I told you.
It's your fault. No, it's your fault. It's your fault. It was him saying sort of, mea culpa. I bought this. I bought this idea. I did it. It was the wrong call. Blah blah blah. And we had to do a bit of work to kind of get back in there. But I think he mentioned the Sergeant Major thing that we did for Sky. That kind of reversed it. Yeah. But that's the thing about working with great marketing people is that and in New Zealand working with great marketing people means taking risks, I guess. Calculated risks, you could call it, but there's still an element of, wow, we're going into this and we don't really know what the outcome's going to be, because that's why, it's the opposite of programmatic digital banner ads in a sense, where you go,
well, they're not going to work.
Well, in a way, yeah. I mean, sorry, somebody will tell you that the click-through rate's really good, but you and I both know that when those pop up on our feed, what do we do? Right?
Well, that's if they do pop up on your feed because you've got an ad blocker on.
I don't want to
potentially.
I can neither confirm or deny that I have ad blocker, but yeah, all of that, all of the above. So yeah, so that was cool. I mean, and starting at DDB was kind of weird because I'd heard a whisper that the lotteries business was up for pitch, and then when I got there, a week before I started, it was all on. And I think DDB were kind of the joker in the pack. It was everyone kind of thought, well, I think it was at Low at the time with Josh. He may have talked about it to you about certain moments during the pitch process. Is that right? You share with me?
He talked more about Vodafone. But
I was at Vodafone, okay. Yeah. But anyway, that happened, and that was in my first week. And we were the kind of the joker in the pack, and it was either going to go to Colenso or Saatchis, and just had a really great relationship with the client Wendy, and we just kind of worked through it, and we just got better and better. The work got better and better, and that was Bid and Regan doing an amazing job.
Yeah.
And we managed to win that, which was huge, to be honest. And that was the start of a really good run there, I think. So wonderful, and again, this, you work there. There's something about the DDB thing. It's hard to describe what it is, but if you look at somebody like Bill Bernbach and what he stood for, it's pretty hard to find somebody better as a North Star of creativity.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I remember when I worked at McCann, they used to have this thing called Truth Well Told, which they'd coined in the sort of 1910s, which became Lies Well Sold. And every agency has their thing. I mean, at least with Saatchis, theirs is Nothing is Impossible, which was coined back in the day, pre-Adidas, I should say.
Really, it was a pre-Adidas.
Oh, totally.
Because when
it was the
came
brothers
out afterwards.
Yeah,
and it looked because
I know
the Adidas line, Impossible is Nothing.
Impossible is Nothing.
Impossible is Nothing was done by TBWA London, which is about 100 yards away from the Saatchis building, and Saatchis come out with to the rest of the world. They came out with.
I think it was Charles and Morris, to be honest. I mean, I might be wrong, but I think it goes back a long way, and it's very much. There's a great book that was written about Charles and Morris Saatchi called Chutzpah and Chutzpah, which talks about the devilish ways that they started their business, which included two wonderful things, which I'm sure you've heard, is that they would hire people, extras,
to wander around the office.
Wander around the office, the sort of the people in the background, if you like, who weren't really plugged into anything at the time, but they just looked busy. My favourite story
the creative department.
That's not changed. And my favourite one was the taxi driver. They basically hired a black cab. They owned a black cab, and they had a driver who would pick clients up post pitches, who would leave the window open and listen to every word that was said post pitch.
I don't know if it's apocryphal or a twist on that, but I heard that Y&R was the same. Like Y&R used to employ Y&R London two I think drivers permanently to ferry people about. And I
met one of them. So when I went to Rainey Kelly, that guy had been around for about 1,000 years.
Yeah.
He didn't look fit to drive, to be perfectly honest. He was that old.
Yeah, from the Henri School of Shakespeare.
Yeah. That's right. So he, quite possibly. Who knows? I suspect they copied.
So, glossing over DDB and going to, you went to London.
Yeah, it was a weird old time. I'd done 5 years at DDB, and we'd had a great run, and the agency had doubled in size, and Campaign Brief Agency of the Year 4 years in a row, or something like that. It was vulgar, but very good. And then I found out that my dad had dementia and was dying, and it was kind of one of those moments where I realised that I'd told my family I was coming for 2 years, and that wasn't quite the case. It was 20 years, and just felt this compulsion to go back. And I remember...
Were you close to your father?
Not close enough. So I figured time was of the essence. And so I kind of thought I'll go back and spend some quality time. Funny old game. So I went back. To be clear, DDB were wonderful and said, we'll keep your job open and all these things. But I wasn't sure he'd just been diagnosed with dementia. So, of course, you know, you didn't know. And so kind of my worst case scenario would be to be with him and spend time with him and then having to go back kind of. And to be fair to DDB, they said, well, we'll keep your job open for a year and we'll get something, which was kind of incredible of them.
Yeah.
But then for me, I just kind of felt I probably need to go, and with it, it's kind of an open ticket, as it were, really. And of course, within a couple of months of me going back, he died, which changed everything. And I took a holiday job at Rainey Kelly as ECD, which was at the time the third biggest agency in London. And, and it was incredibly, and again, the power of New Zealand in a sense, and what we'd been doing at the time. I got offered a M&C, Rainey Kelly and McCann. And, I've long been a lover of the BBC. So, of course, that was their biggest, or not their biggest by any means, but I'd say their best client. So,
who was the client? Who was
Justin Berriman, who ex-Liga Stellani, and there's a story in that I probably should tell. But my first serious girlfriend ended up marrying him. So he found out that I was going to Rainey Kelly as ECD, and literally dropped a glass at the boardroom table of the BBC and went, "Not Toby, that fucker." And so that was fun. So anyway, I went back, and he popped his clogs, poor old bugger. And I stayed there for a while, and then I kind of thought,
how together was he in the time? That you were there?
He went super fast. Like I kind of like my mum's going through it now, and it's different for everyone really. But he went into rapid decline, and so by the time we got there, he was essentially like, it was like talking to a 5-year-old who wanted to be picked up by his mum. So it was never really a particularly kind of, it wasn't a moment to have good honest chats. So, which is a shame, obviously. We'll regret that forevermore. But and then Jo, my lovely wife, got a bit super homesick and went, well, I don't know if I can do this. And so she, and also she works, has been working, and wanted to go back and kind of get back into that. So I found myself in a rather awkward situation, if you like, where I was in London thinking, oh, this didn't really go according to plan. She's back here. So she came back and started practicing, and I was like going, okay.
Oh, sorry, so Jo was getting homesick for New Zealand?
Oh, totally. I mean,
right, okay, because Jo is
she's another Pom.
Pom too, yeah.
But she loves it here. She's so she wanted to come back. So I decided. It was kind of one of those really awkward conversations where I had to give 6 months notice, not one.
Yeah.
And said, guys, it's been great, but I'm out of here. And so I came back.
Who was that to Mark Rolfe?
Yeah. And Rolfie and I are still good mates, to be honest. The last time he was over here on a shoot, we hung out. He kind of got it.
I think he rang me up, sent me a Facebook message demanding to know where he could catch fish. But I said, well, Toby's not going to help you.
He's a fly fisherman, like myself.
Yeah.
He knows a thing or two about it. He owns he's part of a syndicate on some expensive river where they catch half-pound trout and pat themselves on the back. He has no idea how good fly fishing is here, obviously.
Yeah.
He's a lovely guy. Yeah. And he's still there, chairman, still there, hang on in there. Now it's VML Y&R London.
Yeah.
They've moved out of the Black Cat building.
Where are they now?
They're in Drake Street in Soho. Greatly reduced. They lost pretty much. It's possibly my fault, but they lost M&S. They lost.
Couldn't possibly comment, but
it was a wonderful experience, and we did great work. So,
it must have been great for you to go back. Not having had a great time as a junior copywriter.
No, I mean, absolutely. And then coming back and going, wow, this is okay. And then doing great work and working with amazing people, which you get to do in London. And you'd remember that. You go, oh, who should we work with on this job? And and you go, wow, amazing. Yeah. And where should we shoot this?
Yeah.
But it was,
and who should you get to do your voiceover?
Well,
Peter
that's right.
Cook, Harry Enfield.
It's absurd.
Yeah.
So. And I'd still love London, and now both my girls are there. So it's
for good.
I think for a while. And they're both
They said 2 years, but maybe it's 20.
same probably. Yeah. Well, they're both technically speaking Cockneys. They're born within the sounds of Bow Bells, and they're both living within the sounds of Bow Bells. So they've kind of, they've returned to the.
They talk Cockney, do they? Tobes, or they?
No, they talk. They've both got irritable vowel syndrome.
Yeah.
Deeply.
Yeah.
So nobody understands a word they say. They have to have subtitles in London.
Yeah.
But no, they love it here. They're both coming back for Christmas and stuff. And one of them's an advertiser.
Yeah, where's she working?
She's just started. She's freelancing at Joint, which is ironically Damon Collins, who I replaced at Rainey Kelly, set up an agency called Joint. So she's doing a month there or something. So she's going well. And the other one's at Deloitte. She's like Bonfire of the Vanities,
It's funny how so many offspring of advertising people, well, maybe not, go into the business.
No, I think it is funny because it's kind of. It was never like her thing at all. I thought I'd fully put her off in a way, but I think she's a creative person and she kind of loves being funny. And
Well, it's good that there's one in the family.
Well, that's right. Takes after her mother.
I didn't mean to be giving you a hard time.
Why am I talking about my children? Boring.
So you came back to...
I came back to TBWA for a year.
Yeah.
Which was an experiment. And, Roger McDonnell had an idea that I should work with my ex.
What's the idea?
Rog. Man with two voices.
Yeah.
Work with my ex-client from Lotteries.
Yeah.
In hindsight, maybe that wasn't such a great idea, but you live and learn. And then again, I got a call from Marty and went, want to come over and sort the Sydney office out.
But that must have been. So you're in London, and Joe's getting homesick, and
my loyal wife fucked off back to New Zealand before me. I just want to point that out. But
but you're over that now.
Nearly.
Not better at all. And then to go, I'm going back to New Zealand. Oh yeah, I'll go to Sydney.
I think it's funny though, when you spend a year in London working on some pretty amazing clients like Virgin and M&S and Lloyds Bank and BBC, is that you suddenly go, oh, scale's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And bear in mind that I was scratching around the edges when I was there as a kid working out how to do it.
Yeah.
To go back and then suddenly you've got a very big train set and you're kind of enjoying it. I think it kind of gave me a taste for big. And then the Sydney thing came up with Marty, and I just went, yeah, absolutely. And I think that was it. I probably kind of felt like I was in my mind. I was thinking, Christ, I liked a bit of scale as opposed to here, which I know I don't want to bag here. It's been wonderful to me, but it felt actually a bit logical at the time, simply because I think I missed the scale.
Yeah. Yep. No, I can understand that. I think it's something that you. Yeah, it didn't bother me in the slightest because, it had scale in London, but you couldn't do what you wanted to do. You were
sure.
And I'd rather do what I wanted to do on a smaller level than not do what I wanted to do on a big level. So.
Yeah, and I guess the difference was that I was ECD. And when I was in London, I came back as ECD. And I went,
so
I can actually,
do it.
I can,
you could do
and
it.
I'm not.
Yeah.
It's more, it's more that kind of ability of control, that thing of control that you get, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah. And so it was all cut short a little bit, and ended up doing this thing, working in Sydney, kind of commuting, which was fun.
Well, I probably told you, maybe had this conversation, but not. Let's share it with the listener. I commuted to
I remember you did.
To Melbourne for 3 months. Okay, you did for umpteen years for 3 months, and I would get up at 4 a.m. on a Monday morning, and I'd come back at about 1 a.m. on Friday night, and I'd spend most of the weekend asleep, and then go off and do it again. And I don't know how you managed to do it for that length of time.
I didn't do it solidly for 2 years, but it kind of became it became that way, and you know, for personal reasons, it became kind of untenable. But that's not to say it wasn't a pretty incredible experience, because it was an opportunity to go into an agency that was quite broken creatively, rebuild it, you know, get great relationships with clients, and then start doing the kind of work that I love doing. And, you know, and I think we were the most awarded Australian agents at Cannes the year I left. And, you know, in a funny kind of way, my next move, which was again a bit of a bizarre move in hindsight, was to go to assignment, because I kind of felt, well, the awards thing is cool, but it kind of felt a little like advertising people giving advertising people awards about advertising. Like, you know, it felt like they were, you know, our world was kind of getting smaller and in danger of kind of not being taken too seriously. And then suddenly I'm having Peter Biggs, who's a very compelling individual. I don't know if you've met Peter, but
I don't know Peter.
Yeah, so Biggsy was a
Love
very...
to have him on here, Peter, if you're listening.
My God. By far the most interesting person you could ever have on your podcast. But so Biggsy and I talked and said, you just got to come over here and do what you do. And I kind of think it sounded great, you know, and I kind of went, you know, Kim Thorpe and Peter Cullinane and James Hall and all these kind of advertising legends who'd kind of set it up. It just sounded like a fantastic idea. It was kind of like if you like, a precursor to the kind of consultancy. If you think about Accenture now and PwC and Deloitte, etc., those guys were kind of nailing it, smashing it back in the day, but without the big, huge kind of, you know, behemoth consultancy. It was just four guys talking to CEOs about doing work and charging like wounded bulls. So I kind of went, yeah, I'm in. I'll do that. 5 months was pretty much all I could, you know, that was it. Yeah. And you know, it was all fine in the end, and we
parted amicably.
Sort of, pretty much. But it was kind of a shame to see the demise of such a great idea. But again, I think the week before I joined, I think the writing was sort of on the wall when I think Singleton's owned Amazon, why did I say Amazon? Assignment. They owned Assignment, and then it got bought out wholly by WPP, who are, you know, as you know, big fans of the whole campus thing.
Wonderful place, yeah.
Lovely organisation. Can't say anything bad about WPP.
No. God, no.
Well, for libelous reasons, really.
Well, I
probably didn't stop Josh. Did it? I don't know. Anyway, but, you know, I left, and it was a good thing. And I got a call from Mr. Wilson, who is one of my favourite people in the world, who you know too, who I work with.
It's Paul Wilson children.
Paul Wilson at
one of the
DDB.
Wilson brothers.
One of the many Wilson brothers.
Yeah.
It's like the Baldwin brothers. Yeah. You know, but he you know, I worked with Paul at DDB. We did lovely work together. He was a fabulous suit. And he managed to, at DDB, you know, wrestle a pretty hard client, being ANZ at the time. And we did some pretty good work. Dare I say, considering the big blue fire hose that they are now. But anyway, you know, we did great work, and that was all Paul. Amazing suit. And I always come to this day, I thought, God, I've got to work with him again. And then I had the misfortune, really, when I say misfortune, it was for her entirely, of working with his now wife, who was my EA at DDB. Van, the lovely Van, who I kind of thought, well, that puts pay to any, you know, chance of working with Paul again, really.
Because she knows you too well.
Way too well.
Yeah.
God, she's got some shit on me. And
probably me as well.
Yeah, probably you as well. In fact, a lot of people.
Yeah.
Currently, I think she's got some shit on some guy at Westpac, but we won't go into that.
Yeah.
You know. So anyway, Paul called me, and, you know, next minute I get this amazing opportunity to go back to an agency that I always felt very, very happy at, which was Saatchis. You know, and you know, it's funny. I did hear some of your earlier podcasts, and you mentioned Regan when you talked about the slow demise of Saatchis, and, you know, that's a fair comment in a way, in so much as it's a name that's been around for so long. It's only natural, therefore, that shinier, newer, independent-y people come along that you go, oh, bloody Saatchis. But, you know, the thing about Saatchis that I've always loved is, well, for one thing, my dear elderly mother's heard of it. So she right now thinks that I've peaked in advertising because I'm working for an agency she's heard of. That's a good thing. But the other thing about Saatchis is that legacy of wonderful work. And, certainly when I arrived in New Zealand, as we'd be looking at Saatchi Wellington back in the day. And I think one of the reasons I went to assignment was Kim Thorpe. And, just being in their orbit and talking to those guys about the work they did, and Len Cheeseman and all those characters, they put New Zealand on the map.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
we talked about Colenso, and Colenso is a great story in consistency. But if you want to talk about pure magic, something in the DNA of this place, Saatchi Wellington is, and always will be, I think, one of the most iconic advertising agencies New Zealand's ever had. And they were top 10 in the world, long before all these spurious lists of one big ones and all those kind of bullshit things. It was more word of mouth.
Yes. Yeah, no, I was going to be poetic.
Go on.
Which is unlike me, and go, Saatchis lit the match and Colenso started the fire.
Wow.
Which
and Barnes Kapner blew it out.
Yeah. I was very tempted to end the conversation there. No, I mean, absolutely. Saatchis put New Zealand on the map 25 years ago.
Yeah,
but
long time.
But they at the time they were a beacon. They were, they were Barcelona in the Spanish Football League, and there wasn't a Real Madrid. But it was
untouchable.
It was later, and I think Colenso drove it that lit the whole industry up and became became.
Well, consistency is the magic. I mean, it's a very unsexy word, but it really is the thing. Like if any agency can win Agency of the Year and have a good year, it just takes one campaign. Y&R? McWhopper. You'll have a good year, right? FCB, Driving Dogs. Everyone can think of one agency who's done one campaign that lit up the world.
Yeah.
I think doing it every year is pretty tough, and a huge kudos to them.
God, yes.
And it's not one either, it's usually three, you know. And so
some of them have run. Three
have run over the years. It's all very legitimate, Paul. And the thing about Saatchis for me, though, is, and Saatchi now is quite a different agency from the Saatchi I worked at with Rocky and Mike. We are, I don't want to get all too PC on it, but...
No, don't get...
I won't, but it's a very inclusive culture. It looks after people. Everyone's happy in so much as we love doing what we do. I think, there's a desire within Saatchi to actually change that model whereby agencies are seen as kind of, silly, outmoded,
frivolous,
and there's a relationship that we have with some of our clients like Toyota, which is pretty hard to beat. And again, it's a bit like Mike at DDB. When Mike Watson was at DDB all those years, that's 20 years of relationship that is. For me, trust is the key ingredient in every agency. It doesn't matter how sexy an agency you are, what you have in terms of talent. If the clients don't trust you, the clients don't trust you. And I think that's one of the things that I feel really good about with where we're at. And whether that means that we win multitudinous awards, I think we're far more of the opinion that we're there for the service of our clients. If we win awards along the way, then so be it, which is a healthier attitude. I think award chasing now, God knows I was guilty of it, is a pretty fucking vile thing for agencies to do, because I think, for one thing, don't kid yourself, your clients are embarrassed by it. I think what you need to do with awards is you need to do the work, and then you kind of think to yourself, well, everyone loves it, we should enter it. That's my point of view on awards. And I'm not saying that in any degree of loftiness. I've been as guilty as the next man of trying to win them and winning them and all the rest of it. I just kind of go, as a creative person, you have to kind of try and influence culture. Yeah. There's an IKEA spot that's just started running in the UK where every man and his dog is singing this little ditty, and I won't try and repeat it, but listeners need to Google IKEA Mother Christmas ad, and you'll see what I mean. And it's just the most wonderful piece of engaging communication that gets shared by everyone.
All right. Well,
Is
thank
that
you,
enough?
thank you,
Shall I
Toby.
leave?
There are an awful lot of subjects that we could have gone into in depth and could have gone further, but
It's late.
you and I have been prattling on for nearly 2 hours, so it's probably
Have we
time.
really?
And most of it, well, it's either 2 hours or 1 hour.
Two.
Two.
Feels late.
And I think most of it is probably
Usable?
going to be cleared by the lawyers, apart from my
comment?
frequent toilet breaks.
Well, I think it's good to embrace, incontinency.
At an early age, it's good to get used to it. Toby Talbot, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
coming. I'd like to say it's a pleasure. I'd like to. Probably could.
Same. Can I just say it has been a pleasure drinking the Mount Edward Pinot Noir.
Excellent.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
mate.
Cheers, buddy. By the way, listeners, we're shaking hands.
You've been listening to Truth
And Soul.
the New Zealand Advertising Podcast.
Okay, list of credits. Thank you very much to this week's guest. If you liked it, drop us a line, paul@truthandsoul.co.nz. Thank you very much to everyone at Franklin Road, Jonathan, Cole, the Wastrel, Shane, Vanessa and Gracie. Otis, who did the logo, and Matt Stalker, who's going to play us out. Thank you.
On the farewell drive, we found 100 ways that our hands fit together. Centrifugal force pulls us apart as we spin. Please forgive my trembling hands, crudely silhouetted by the flickering spires of candlelight, while the wicked sleep sound. The anxious toss and turn, thoughts come not as single spies, but in battalions, while the wicked sleep sound. The anxious toss and turn. And it's at times like these that we understand our Father's fascination with dendrology. The family tree is losing its leaves. Please forgive my trembling hands, crudely silhouetted by the flickering spires of candlelight, while the wicked sleep sound. The anxious toss and turn, thoughts come not as single spies, but in battalions, while the wicked sleep sound. The anxious toss and turn.